den Richtlinien so vorgenommen worden sind, wie wir das für richtig halten. Das heißt...
And all that.
Aborted mother. Mother looked at her enlarged hands, thinking how much they resembled potholders. She sat on the couch. Her thin-framed body was outlined by the soft glowing hue of the TV. The sound was ear-piercing, some man screaming in Japanese. She felt strange. Everything was in a haze now. She reached into a brown paper bag and pulled out another hypodermic needle filled with pus and blood. She bit off one end, and the dark brownish-red liquid oozed out of her mouth.
Take it easy,
Baby said, from her dirty crib. Her large, black, milky eyes would cross every time she spoke.
You don't want to overdose.
She swished around in her wet diaper. She was surrounded by broken wooden soldiers, stuffed animals without limbs, plastic lawn flamingos with razor blades embedded into their bodies.
Don't lecture me,
Mother said coolly. Her large lips twisted up as if she'd been eating lemons.
I didn't ask for you to come into my world. Nevertheless,
Baby retorted, capturing a Japanese wasp between her thumb and forefinger.
I'm here. What good would you be to me if you were not here to fight off the wolves?
Baby pulled the stinger from the wasp and swallowed him whole. She closed her eyes and felt the bee go all the way down to her tummy. Mother heard the howls of the wolves outside. They were distant, maybe a few miles off. They would be scratching on the front door tonight, whispering their evil Nazi propaganda to her baby. She tugged at her stringy blonde hair.
They will never get in.
Mother said.
Never.
Later, there was a knock at the front door. Mother was passed out, lying face first on the puke-covered carpet. The knock was persistent, and it woke Baby up. She tried calling out to Mother, but she was too far gone in the dream country. Baby decided to climb out of her crib. She crawled to the couch and slowly pulled herself up on the arm. To reach the doorknob, she had to climb on the top of the back of the couch. Baby turned the doorknob with all the strength her little hand could muster. The door creaked open. A tall, well-dressed man in a black suit appeared. He had a permanent smile, drawn on a pasty white face with 2 8-balls for eyes.
Yes?
Baby said to the stranger.
I am here to make your day, ma'am.
The stranger said, his mouth never moved. His voice was robotic, as if he were a doll and someone pulled a cord attached to his back.
What I have in my suitcase can make a life decision for you, my good lady. Good or bad, usually for the good.
A laugh sputtered, and the 8-balls in his head jumped up and down.
I'm really rather busy.
Baby told the stranger.
As you can see, I have a situation with Mother.
I can help you with that situation.
The stranger pushed his way through the door and laid his weather-beaten suitcase on the coffee table.
Well, no. Please, we're fine here.
It doesn't look fine to me.
the stranger hissed. He turned his clockwork neck slightly, and his head swiveled around completely, stopping momentarily to scout the messy house.
Do you even get to eat regular meals?
Baby climbed down from the couch. She crawled over top of half-eaten pus-filled syringes, empty candy bar wrappers, and past Mother, who was lost in dreamland, her mouth open, drooling on the carpet. The stranger bent down on one knee.
You don't have to say anything, little girl. I see this all the time. She says she's going out to buy food and supplies. Comes back with McDonald's, candy, and enough syringes to make William Burroughs come in his pants.
Baby looked over at Mother.
She's very loving in her own way, I suppose.
Where's your father, girl?
The stranger touched Baby briefly on her tiny shoulder, and then withdrew quickly.
He was eaten by the wolves. He went out late at night to score. A pack of wolves tore him apart and ate his insides.
How tragic. You have to be careful of those nasty beasts,
the stranger said. The stranger stood.
That is why you need help with life decisions.
He opened the briefcase and extracted a large bottle of brown gooey liquid.
This will do the trick. Trust me.
Baby really did want a new mother. She loved Mother, but she couldn't keep her promises. She really couldn't keep her safe from the wolves out there. Baby shivered. The stranger shook his clockwork head slowly.
Tisk, tisk,
the stranger said.
It sounds as if they're getting closer.
Baby swallowed hard.
What do you get if I accept this gift from you?
Oh, a smart child, I see.
The stranger's 8 balls danced in his eye socket as a growl of laughter cut loose from throat.
I get your old mother. Fair enough. A new and better, more caring mother for a mother that is better left for the collectors.
Baby gasped. The collectors were nothing but scourges digging in garbage dumps for bodies piled in large wastelands. They ravaged the dead for meals, for the people who live underground, the rich who could afford to take all of their possessions and leave the top level after the apocalypse came and destroyed the world.
The scourges pay well then?
Baby placed her thumb in her mouth, began to suck softly. The wolves could be heard outside the door, scratching, pushing against it with their bodies, whining and growling. Baby snatched the bottle from the stranger. She snapped off the cap and guzzled down the thick brown liquid. The stranger watched with much impatience, even lifting an encouraging hand.
Drink, drink, drink it all down. Yes,
the stranger hissed. Baby felt strange. Her stomach began to swell. Baby fell to her knees and immediately vomited out the small amount of contents from her stomach. She wiped the yellow bile from her lips with a hand. Baby looked up and saw the stranger open the front door. Baby tried to scream, but her throat was too raw. Baby ran and hid behind her crib. She covered her eyes with her hands. 6 gray wolves with fiery red eyes burst in. They gathered around her mother. They took turns tearing at her, sharp fangs ripping the flesh from her face, hands and legs. Mother screamed, prayed to God for help. The 2 wolves bit hard into an ankle each. They dragged her out of the house and into dark night. Their brothers went out to the door as well, stopped at the doorstep, and called out for all to hear. They had a new body for the landfill. Baby stepped out from behind the crib. She saw the puddle of dark red blood the wolves left behind. Baby's head felt heavier than usual. Her eyes rolled in the back of her head. In a split second, Baby was passed out on the floor. Baby awoke 2 days later. Her eyes fluttered. A cloud of smoke dispersed. She realized she was lying on the kitchen table, the stranger standing in front of her.
What's going on?
Baby asked, still a little bit groggy. The stranger took from his black coat a kitchen knife.
It's time,
the stranger said.
Time? Time for what?
Baby tried to pull her arm up, but couldn't. Both arms were strapped down by leather cuffs fastened to chains that were attached to the table.
For you to give birth to your new mother.
KAZOO by James Sallis. Read by Lothar TUPPAN. Walking down the street on my way to see the leech, I'm attacked by this guy who jumps out of the alley shouting, "Hi, hi, fee fi fo fum!" Blood curdling, over and over, cutting air with the sides of his hands. He says, "Hi!" again, then, "Watch out, man, I'm gonna lay you open." He's still assaulting the air, battering it too. I think, an alley cat. Then I stand off and kinda watch this little dance he's doing. Dispassionately in front, you see, but I get to admiring it. He's cutting some great steps, beating hell out of the air. I snap my fingers for him, clap a little. "You watch out, man," he says. "You get cute, I'm gonna hurt you bad. Put you through that wall there." Then he goes back to his high and fee-fi-fo-fum. He's standing off about 3 yards from me, jumping around, chopping his hands back and forth, looking mean, a real hard ankle. He's about 5 foot and looks like he might have modeled for Dylan Thomas's bit about the bunched monkey coming. By this time, there's quite a crowd piling up. They're all standing around clapping, snapping their fingers, digging the action. Some guy in light black heads in to sell watchtowers, and this Morton pops up and starts passing around stone tablets and pillows of salt. There's a spade out on the edge of the crowd. He's picking pockets. Got 3 arms. Deep Fat Friar passes by, frowns, goes on down the street, flogging himself with a vinyl fly swatter. And there's this cop on the fringe giving out with a mantra of dispersal. "Ibashuma go go, Ibashuma go go." Don't think he had it quite right, One guy pulls out a set of plastic spoons and commences to make them go clackety-clack between his thumb and great toe. Another guy has a kazoo. Someone else is trying to get them to do Melancholy Baby. "Take your clothes off and be a dancing bear," this smartass yells out at the back of the crowd. He is kinda hairy, this guy. "Come on, Ralph," he shouts at me. "Come on, man, we're gonna tangle. Ha! Fee-fi-fo-fum!" But you can tell he likes it. The attention, because he goes up on his toes and pirouettes. I stand there looking at him, frowning a little, dispassionate again. I'm getting kinda tired of the bit by now. Some guy comes by about then with a monkey on his back grinding at a nut chopper. Another one's hunkered down at the corner to demonstrate his Vegematic. His buddy's scraping bananas. And there's this, arthritic wobbling down the sidewalk with a Dixie cup begging green stamps. Ha-ha-hing! This last one's way up in the nose. He stops and drops his hands, looks down at the concrete, shuffles his feet. "Aw, come on, Ralph!" Then he's high-ing and fee-fi-fo-fumming again, going at it like mad, jumping around like a spastic toad. And by this time, I'm beginning to get real tired. I put up with his bag through here, but now I'm gonna be late to see the leech. And let this be a lesson to all you, I move in for the kill. I've been watching Captain Conqueroo on the morning tube, you see, and I'm eager to try this thing out. So when this guy sees me coming and charges in like a rhinoceros or something, I just step over so casually to the side, and with a sudden blur of motion, I get him with a triple reverse elbow block, lay it right on him. He folds up like a letter that's getting put in an envelope that's too small for it, and he falls down in slow motion. His tongue's hanging out, and a fly's walking up towards his teeth. "Name's not Ralph," I tell him. Then I stand there humming along with the spoons and kazoo till he can breathe again, which doesn't take him over 20 minutes or so. We'd only got through the Black Snake Rag, Mountain Morning Moan, and part of America the Beautiful, Raga form. Anyhow, he starts coming back from violet towards the pinkish end of the spectrum, and he looks up at me and he says, "Aw, gee, Algernon, look, give me a chance. Sorry I bugged you." Saying that reminds him of something, and he stops long enough to spit out the fly. "Wasn't my idea," he goes on. "Nothing personal against you. Guy told me to do it. Bartholomew?" I shake my head. I kick him a little. "Who?" "Guy came up to me at the bus stop, told me you were on your way to the bank. Don't know who he was. Said if I beat you up, I could have the money, and if I didn't, he'd send his parakeet out to get me. Chauncey?" I kick him again. Big guy, southerner, hair looked like a helmet, scar where his nose should be, cigar stuck in it. Yeah, look, you wouldn't be Rumpelstiltskin by any chance. Sorry, I tell him that as I'm kicking him. Didn't think so. I reach down and help him up, since he's obviously going to need help. That'd be Savannah Rolla, a friend of mine, I tell him. Sav is a filmmaker, and I know he and a poet type by the name of Round John Virgin are hassling with a love epic called Blood Pies, in which the symbols of the mud cake, the bloodbath, the cow patty, and innocent youth find their existential union. So I look around for the cameras, but I can't spot them. I'm on my way to the blood bank, I tell the guy. He's got a funny sense of humor, Savannah does. Do anything for a friend, though. And since his hand's in mine already, since I'm helping him up, I shake it. Ferdinand Turnip, I introduce myself. Ferdinand. My wife, Isabella. Name's Donna. Percival Potato, he says, and gives me this big grin like he's busting open. Mad to greet ya. He's giving me the eye, so I take it and put it in my wallet right next to the finger someone gave me the day before. We talk a while, have lunch together in the laundromat. Then it's time for me to split. We notice the band's still going at it, and Percy cops a garbage can and heads over to blow some conga drum with them. I walk a mile, catch a camel, and rush to the blood bank. I realize I left all my beaver pelts at home again, so I take off one of my socks, the red one, and give it to the driver. He blows his nose on it, thanks me, and puts it in his lapel. At the blood bank, Dr. Acid, who's the head, tells me the leech is dead from overeating. Dr. Acid has 3 friends. Grass, who's rooting around in the drawers. Roach, who looks like a leftover. And Big H, who rides a horse. Joint has the bends and is taking the day off. They're all eating popcorn balls and scraping bits of the leech off the wall, putting the pieces in a picnic basket that has a place for bottles of wine, too. They ask me to stay for a potluck dinner, but I say no. I cop some old commercials with them for a while. Then I dive out of the window and swim to my studio. Someone's dumped Jell-O in the water, and it's pretty tough going. The crocs are uptight today, but the piranhas seem placid enough. At the studio, reverently, I apply the 65th coat to my soft thing. 4 more to go. I got the idea from Roy Biv, a friend of mine. Each layer of paint is a step up the spectrum, a solid color. I have carefully calculated the weight of my paint, canvas, medium. The last brush stroke of the 69th coat, and my painting will fall through the floor. It will be a masterpiece of aesthetic subtlety. By the time I've drunk all the turpentine and finished burning the brushes, it's willy-nilly time to dine. But the lemmings are bad in the hall, so I'm late catching my swan, and I have to wait on top of the TV antenna for about an hour. Then by the time I get home, the vampires are out. They wave as I pass. Everyone knows you can't get blood from a turnip. And anyway, they're all saps. I go in, and Donna comes up and kisses me, and puts her arm around me, and tells me she doesn't love me anymore. I look out the window. Sure enough, the world stopped going around. So I go in the John, and I find my kazoo, and I play for a long time. Hey, Billy, why do you look so down? Aw, Dad, I got a computer, a PlayStation, and a barn full of iguanas, and I'm still bored. Gee, Billy, when I was your age, I would read lots of stories in pulp magazines. Oh, with stories of weird adventure and fantasy, horror, satire, and lots of action. Wow, that sounds great, Dad. Yeah, I sure wish there was something like that right now. There is, Daddy-O! Who are you? I'm Dr. Mary Von Rocksprocket, host of the Twisted Pulp Radio Hour. And now there's... Yeah? Twisted Pulp Magazine! What's that, Doctor? Why, it is a return to greatness! Available on all your digital devices! That is what it is! Look! Whoa! Dad, this looks awesome! Exciting and, dare I say it, very unwholesome. You definitely have that right, my good man. Ha ha! Thanks, Dr. Mary. My pleasure, Billy. And just between you and me, I am not sure that this man is really your father. Bye. Dad? Just read your Twisted Pulp magazine, Billy. Twisted Pulp magazine, available in dark alleyways behind meth labs everywhere, or at Amazon.com or archaicmedia.info. That is ARCHAICMEDIA.info. The Camino Real. Written by Lothar J. TUPPAN. Read by the author. She had been walking ceaselessly on the Camino Real, the day stretching past the road under her feet. The sky was a clear, bright blue that promised to cover her for as long as she walked. Sounds came and went as she focused on different groups of scrub brush and rocks. She was tired, but in a distracted sort of way. Her chest, right above her left breast, ached. She stared at her Doc Martens as she walked down the cobblestones connecting the Spanish missions of California. Rhythmically, the cobblestones asked her who she was and where she was going. She didn't know. Where does this road lead, she asked, matching the rhythm. What cities lie ahead? None, answered the stones. Only the missions lie on this road. She rubbed at the pain in her chest. It felt like there was something inside of her, something hard and hot. A small sob escaped her lips, but she looked down at her feet and kept walking. When she next looked up, she saw a mission in the closing distance. The sounds of the wilderness stopped as she stepped through the gates of the outer wall. The sun shone down upon the courtyard from an interminable midday point. The shadows were small and weak, barely daring to step beyond their roots. She turned to the left and entered the main building. The door led to a hallway which led to more doors, leading to rooms. Rooms filled with statues of saints and angels, Madonnas and martyrs. The rooms spoke to her. In the room of the bleeding Madonna, she heard her mother, telling her not to upset her father who, having had a hard day at work, was in a surly mood. She heard her mother's panicked voice pray to Mary, and left the room, ashamed at the disgust that she felt for the woman who gave her life. In the room of the saint with the axe in his head, she heard her father, asking her to forgive him while trying to convince her that it was her fault anyway. She didn't like the way the saint looked at her. She hadn't put the axe to him, and a daughter should never feel foul when her father looks at her. One room had a statue of Christ, looking to the sky in his crucified state, waiting for his father to deliver him. The room echoed noises of the past, of people walking on the street around her, people ignoring the dirty runaway, alone, without a friend. She visited all the rooms, and calmly, albeit uncomfortably, left all of them after hearing what they had to say. There was no love here, no God of any kind. This place was not her destination. Sitting down in the hallway, she sighed. She would have to keep walking the Camino Real, and she would be even more tired when she reached whatever lay ahead. Walking back out into the courtyard, she noticed an alcove against the far wall. Within the shade of the alcove, she saw a man sitting. She walked over, shading her eyes so that she could better see, and said, "Hello." "Hello, young lady," said the man. He wore dark clothes, smudged by the dust, a brimmed hat for working the California fields, and a smiling mask, reminiscent of the Greek comedy masks. The toes of his bare feet wiggled as a light breeze passed through the courtyard. "Why are you here?" he asked. I don't know," she replied. "Why are you here?" "Perhaps I was waiting for someone like you. Are you Catholic?" "No, I don't believe any of that." "Then why are you here?" He poked a stick into the mortar of the alcove and chuckled. She felt a glimmering of a memory, of an old black man who wrote something unseen in wet cement with a stick. He had laughed too. "Do you know my friend Elliot?" she asked. "We've met before." "Do you know God?" No, I don't." "What do you know? To what are you true?" The hard thing in her chest burned. The pain made her double over and cry out softly, "Elliot!" A tear landed in the dust, and within the wet margins she remembered a gun, held by a sharp-dressed man. She remembered the old black man beside her saying, "Run!" his voice filled with love. She remembered feeling that love and choosing to step between him and the sharp-dressed man. She remembered the freedom and peace of her choice. She saw in her mind an even earlier time, Elliot writing in wet cement, "Karen is my friend." She remembered dying. The man in the alcove touched her gently. "Do you know who you are?" Yes, I do." She touched the pain in her chest. And do you know God? Yes, if you want to call it that. And she pulled out the bullet, feeling the warm flow of blood over her hand and chest. And where do you belong, he said, tears running down the cheeks of his mask. Gently, she placed the bullet in his hand and touched the lips of his mask, painting them red. She turned away from him and left the mission. Back on the Camino Real, she looked south, where her previous life ended, and north, towards further missions. She knelt down to the stones of the road and touched them softly, before walking west into the shadows of the wilderness, away from the Camino Real. My name is Karen.
This is Jackie Ayers, and you've been listening to Dead Airwaves on KKRN 88.5. Episode 7, Aborted Mother by Mark Slade. Performed by John FREDERATE. KAZOO by James SALLIS. CAMINO Real by LOTHAR TUPPAN. Theme music by Tim Slade.